Hi, I'm Gloria.
And I'm Mari.
Just two women trying to inspire ourselves.
And others. And we have a special guest today. Somebody else we're trying to inspire.
Hello. My name is Sabrina Valdez. I work at a senior living community here in Westchester. I've been doing that for the past year. I love what I do.
I love it. Yay.
So I've known Sabrina for a while now because she taught my daughter when she was a teacher, and you know, she's an amazing soul. She's now done the full range.
Yeah, now I've gone from teaching the babies, first graders, to teaching middle school, to now going into senior living, which is very interesting.
There's a common thread in all that for sure, though.
I think it's making a difference, and sometimes you see where you make the difference. You plant that seed and you're like, I hope this person catches to it, and then they do, and you're like, all right, I did something good.
Amen. Yes.
No, you're very good reaching people and you know, listening to exactly what they need, and you're just very good at that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So anyhow, the last podcast, I had mentioned how my parents both, you know, were going through that change in our family. So my father will be turning 88 tomorrow. My mother just turned 84. And, you know, it's a change as not just for them, but for us as their children. Right. You know, and I've gotten emotional with you many times talking about the changes that I see as their daughter. Right. In fact, right now, you know, my dad, they're not renewing his license.
There you go.
That's a major
change.
That is affecting him tremendously because so one of the things that I've noticed, and I'm sure you see this all the time, that as we get older and then our parents get older, it's as if certain things, not just things that you were able to do that you see you physically can't do anymore, but all of a sudden just normal everyday things, you feel like they're being taken away from you.
Yeah.
So, you know, with my dad, I've seen that a lot because his mental capacity has been deteriorating. So it's, you know, I've noticed it in things like my dad. It was funny because I posted, you know, they were helping me with a project outside, and one of the teachers actually made a comment like, oh my God, he's so cute. Remember Mr. Fix-It? And, you know, now the simplest task, like he was like the handyman in the entire family. Anything we needed, you know, he came and resolved it. And now it's like, he'll look at me and he'll be like, oh, how do you do that? And then I'll Google it or I'll YouTube it, and I'm like, okay, it's like this. So now what he used to do without even thinking about it, he can't remember how to do it.
It becomes something new.
And he'll even say to me, how do you know how to do that? But it's like so many years of watching him that all I need to do is see a quick video to remember, okay, this is how he used to do that. So it's really sad because the fact that he can't remember, you see that it's like he's losing his purpose. Yeah. And he knows it. And many times, you know, in Spanish, like he'll literally just go like this to me and he'll be like, así es la vida, así es la vida. You know, and one day, I don't know if I told you, he literally said to me, yo no soy el hombre que yo era. Meaning, you know, he's not the person he was.
And they see that. And a lot of times, what I find working here is that they're not alone. We think we're doing the right thing for them they keep their house, they keep all the memories, they keep all their stuff, but they're alone. And all day long, they're alone with their stuff. Doesn't mean anything. In a place like this, you get up and you go out, and who are you with? Everybody else. And everyone has something to say, and so it becomes more like an extended family. They're more family than just an apartment. Yes, it is an independent community, but they all get together downstairs. They all get together for breakfast and lunch and dinner and activities, and so they're not alone. And a lot of times we think we are helping our parents by giving them the home. They have the home. It belongs to them. They own the home. They own the things inside. Does it really mean anything? In the end, the home and the stuff doesn't really mean anything when they're alone all day long in front of a TV or reading a book.
And I mean, I imagine too, a lot of the, people in the community that you work in also they're all going through similar things and in similar stages. And I'm sure, like, I obviously, for me, it's not my parents. I live in a multi-generational home where my grandmother is the one that's aging. Mm-hmm. But, like, my grandmother will say things to me like, all her friends are passing away. Mm-hmm. Todo mundo que yo conozco, like, all my friends are dying and I don't really have anybody anymore. Like, you start seeing your siblings pass and you start seeing your friends. Yeah. And it's like, that I imagine that has to be very hard. That weighs on them, also. The weight of that. And then having to then transfer that as like weight to the children,
Right.
And we were talking about how you go from being the child to now like that role reversal,
the caretaker.
Yes.
And
you become the caretaker.
And that's a really big shift, especially as like the youngest of 4, right? Because you're like their baby, and as we know as parents, like, your baby is always your baby, no matter what. Yes. Like, no matter if they're like a 50-year-old woman,
Yeah.
But that becomes, I feel like that is a big weight and a shift for families,
but
as they
it's
start to
another
transition.
way to think of it, because I had never heard of senior living community. I had never heard of that. So when I got this job and I started seeing these people are actually living.
Exactly.
They're living every day, whether it's they go and play bingo or they go and watch a movie together, whatever it is that they're doing. Tomorrow I don't work. No, today's Sunday. Today I don't work. Today when I leave here, I'm going to go to the movies with them at 1:30. So
funny.
You still want to do things together. You find things to do together. It becomes a family.
So I've been watching. Have you seen Blue Zones on Netflix?
No.
I just heard about this. I'm dying to see it.
So my brother told me my brother's wife, my sister-in-law told me about it. Then my brother, started explaining a little further. So there's a series on Netflix called Blue Zones, and it's about living to 100 or longer, but healthy lives.
It's like certain places, right? That these blue zones that a lot of people live to be over 100.
So there's certain places around the world. I forget how many there were. Maybe 6. I think it was 6, maybe 8 max.
Okay, yeah.
So there's certain places around the world that have these blue zones where it's very evident that the people there are living longer, healthier lives.
Right.
So this gentleman was, and there's books on it. In fact, the other day I found that there was actually a cookbook on what they eat in those places. And mind you, it's very different diets because you're talking about all over the world. Like one place was Sardinia, Italy.
Right.
Another place was
Japan.
In Japan. One in Greece, since you just went to Greece, I think it was Ikaria.
Okay.
In Greece. So there's these different little pockets around the world, and there was one in the US. It was called Lomo Linda Lomo. It's in California.
Right.
So there's these pockets, and this gentleman was trying to figure out, he researched what is going on in these certain locations that is allowing for this.
Right.
And one of the major things is what you're talking about. It was sense of community. Having a sense of like there were factors that stuck out to me. Sense of community, like family, friends, that you have that structure and the people supporting you, whether it's living in a generational home or in a place like an independent living community where there's other people there with you. Another one was obviously the diet. There was having a purpose. Having like a faith-based community was another one, and exercise. But what was funny was something here, which is even me, like in the US, we think of exercise like something you go out and you do it, like it's intentional. Whether it's a gym or something like that. But in a lot of these places, they found that exercise was natural. It was an everyday activity that was natural to them, like
incorporated.
Like in Sardinia, for example, it's a very sloped area. So you're having 80-something-year-olds walking an extremely inclined area just to get home from having gone to pick up bread.
Right.
You know, there was another place, Costa Rica, and they showed how he was herding the cattle. The man was 90-something, I believe, and he was still herding cattle. You know, there was another place that the women, like, they need the corn for the tortilla, and they were saying that muscular calorie burn.
It's how they live.
So in Greece, they were saying, you know, how when they eat their meal, after they eat, they get up and they dance. That's normal after dinner.
Right. It's incorporated
so
into
it was
their
these
life.
natural activities. In Japan, it was gardening.
Right. That's what yeah.
So there were these factors, but the sense of community was one of the most important ones, because how you said, like my parents, thankfully they're both alive and they have each other. But, you know, they're at home. And unless we go by and visit them, they're alone.
Right.
And you're right. My dad is either sitting in front of the TV or in front of the computer, I think just staring at the screen at this point. And, you know, my mom is the one that's more active, you know, because she'll be cleaning or cooking. But then if not, he's watching the TV and she's on her iPad watching whatever Netflix thing she wanted to watch because she knows he's like zoned out watching something on the TV.
That's it.
So even though they're together, there's even that isolation. That's been created now that they're older.
Which is it continues on with the children. What do? They're on their phones. Same thing. And I noticed that even in the community where you have these people that they're sitting alone also on their phones.
Isn't that so interesting?
They find a way to entertain themselves. But it's cool because they're still sitting right there. Kind of like the youth that we see them on their phones. They're right there in front of each other. They do that.
I think it's so, you know, I think one of the major themes of like that theme of community. And like, you know, as I was just talking to two friends yesterday, they lost both of their parents. But as their parents were aging, each one of them, their parents were divorced, each one of them took a parent into the, you know, one of the siblings took a parent into their home. Okay. And they did it for that sense of community. And you know, sometimes I think of like a multi-generational home as like, it's a lot to handle. But I think of like the changes I've seen in my grandmother from having my children around and the purpose of having those kids, you know, from going, you know, being 87 years old and losing her husband. And honestly, you know, I think we would have lost her if we hadn't moved back. You know, our partner of 70 years. It's like, it's just a lot. So then now all of a sudden, you know, her life was infused with a lot of purpose. You know, it was like, even, you know, it's a funny story, but even yesterday, we came home, I told her I had the craziest day yesterday, and she knew I'd had a crazy day. So when I get home, I see her bed was like, you know, like, what do they call it, turn down service at a hotel?
Your bed?
Yes, she had freshened up my bed and like had prepared it to go to sleep. And I was like, and she goes, I'm so happy to, like, you know, she's like, I'm happy to do it. It makes me so happy, you know, and I was like, oh, you don't understand how happy it makes me because I'm exhausted. I'm just going to jump into bed now, you know. But it's like those small things, like that purpose, that community, that knowing you're going to wake up and the house isn't going to be empty. And so it's like, how can we create that community in places like the facility you work in, but then even how can we create that community?
And that's something that we as the children need to look at. What is really happening with our parents at home? Are they actually home alone and nothing is happening?
Right.
Is it because the value of the house? Is that what we're trying to maintain? Is that good for them? Because once, I don't know, when I saw this place and I see how they live, they all interact, everyone worries about one another. Hey, I haven't seen Gloria today. Where is she? You know, is she okay? Is she feeling good? Let's go knock on her door. You know, can you call her? You know, they're always on top of each other, making sure that they're all okay. So, Mira, I have to go to Walmart. Why don't you go with me? So there's always something going on. Right. And that you have that little bit of happiness. So yes, they no longer have the house, but they realize that they didn't need that house.
Right.
Because now they don't even spend time in their apartment. They're usually outside doing stuff. So it's not that important. And with this particular place that I work at, I have seen a few others. What I like about this particular place is that it has a full kitchen. A lot of these places, they have like a kitchenette, so it's something small.
Wait, they have a full kitchen in their apartment?
They have a full kitchen in their apartment, so you don't have to cook because you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner is part of the deal. But you also have your own kitchen, so if you feel like cooking, if that's something that you still want to do. We have a Filipino couple that they cook all the time. They are the best. They always share, and it's like amazing.
Is that the couple that she's Filipino and he's African American? Or
no, they're both Filipino.
That he's really a big guy.
Big guy, yes.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yes, and he cooks all the time, and she bakes all the time.
That's awesome.
So you can still have that aspect of your life. Independence. So
which is also very important.
Which is good.
Yeah.
They clean their apartments once a week. Okay, so you don't want to clean, you don't clean. But if you want to clean, you can.
Right.
You know, you still have your space. It's not like if you're in other places that I've been at, and I haven't been to many, so I'm not one to say. But the ones that I've been at, it's a little kitchenette, a small bathroom, and a room. Well, you're kind of confined. Here you have an apartment.
Right.
Which is different. And yet you still have the community, you still have the people always doing something.
I feel like that's such a great option, especially for people that they need that community. They don't have it where they're at. You know, if you're living in a home by yourself, like that's
even the next step with when you're saying that your dad forgets things, is forgetting things. Maybe assisted living is the way to go, where you do have that assistance for things.
Yeah.
For whatever it is that you need. Hey, did you take your medicine? Hey, did you have lunch? Hey, did you have dinner? That kind of thing.
Right.
Here we do that. We have people that have dementia. They're still independent, and all we need to do is remind them, hey, you haven't gone to have lunch. You haven't had lunch today. You need to go in. And the people in the restaurant make sure
they know
everybody.
Yeah.
It's a small community.
I think my biggest struggle with my parents would be, how do you get them to even open their mind to something like that, or even as simple as coming to live with me and the girls. The other day I was mentioning that to Artie. I'm like, I'm thinking of offering that option to my parents, but I'm like, there is no way my parents would give up their house. It's not about us wanting them to be there.
The house.
Mind you, their house is literally 2 blocks from here. I'm 5 minutes from here.
You know how they would do it? If they thought you needed them there.
Now that
everybody's an adult.
Leaving,
yeah, I don't have Lauren here. The house feels empty. I need you here. I find that in these situations, and I've seen this with my grandmother, the thing that draws in the most is that need. My grandmother was pretty sick. She got a horrible cold in August, and we ended up having to take her to the hospital one day. And I have to tell you, I've never seen her that sick. And that was it was a hard thing.
That's hard.
But one of the days that she was there, she goes, I think she was like ready to die, And I looked at her, and we're going through some things with my daughter, and my daughter's in speech therapy. And I said, oh no, you're not done here yet. You need to stick around because you need to hear her talk. And then she goes, like she literally sat up, she goes, you're right. And within 3 days, I'm not even joking, she was completely better. And so
that's an idea.
I think sometimes all they need is like that reminder that they're still needed. That like, I need you or something, oh my gosh, it'd be such a help, sometimes to have somebody here with a dog. I don't know what that might be, but I think they need to feel needed.
I think they would feel more needed with me saying about the dog.
Yeah, with Lauren gone. Yeah, because you do have a big dog. Sometimes you have to take the dog with you when you go to North Carolina. That's not always easy because you can't fly with him, so you have to drive with him. What if you need to go for some? I think sometimes we don't, but that is, and especially with the driving thing, because when my grandmother gave up her license, she gave it up finally at 90. I noticed that it was a really big transition. Somebody who was just used to jumping in her car and driving to church, and jumping in her car and going to a presidente and driving in her, at resolver cosita. And then sometimes she would, no, I'm not leaving the house. I'm like, it's been 10 days and you haven't left this house. So I would say, can you please come with me so I don't have to get the kids down? Can you just sit in the car with the kids, please? I need you. I can't get down with them both. It's a lot. okay, yeah, I can do
I'm
that.
needed. I'm needed.
You know?
Right.
It's that's like sometimes like that's just all they need, like to know that they're needed, that their presence there is, you know, that they have a purpose. I think it's just how can we create that for them,
purpose.
you know, and in a community that's created by the environment of they're together, you know,
and there's a difference, because there are some communities that are independent living facilities, communities that are buildings.
Right.
Then I think you become a number. You know?
Right.
It's not like small.
Where we're at, it's a small community, so you all know each other.
Yeah.
It's very different. I think that's like the gem of Westchester.
I love that. Yeah, it's a, you know, that is a very good point too. It's like small community where you can actually create connections. Because not all communities built the same, right? So, you know, and you have a big family, you know, not everybody does. We were talking about it too, you know, not everybody has people to draw from. But yeah, I think sometimes just these are difficult conversations.
Yeah. And really see what's important for them. A lot of times they want to keep their stuff, but is the stuff really that important? And sometimes we need to say, hey, I'm not going to use this when you're gone.
I know, it's hard for them.
Why are you keeping it? Because I don't want it. And it's hard to say that because you know it means something to them, but it really doesn't mean anything to you. So what am I going to do with it when you're gone? And they'll start seeing that you don't really need to keep so much stuff. And downsizing with them, I think, is also a good help where together you can say, do we appreciate this? Do we need this? Can we donate this? Can we give this to someone else that's going to use it? And that's also another way of helping yourself, because at some point your parents are going to pass away and you are going to be left with things. So if you can downsize all these things with them, that's going to help you also at the time of loss.
Yeah.
Where you can actually say, oh, I remember when we talked about this plan and we said we were keeping it because.
I think it's just, it makes it so, and in fact, this also came about, you know the person, it's someone whose father, you know, he's probably younger than my parents, but he got very ill recently. And she was telling me that, like, he has a shed full of junk in her eyes. You know what I mean?
Right.
And there was something she was going to give me, and she was like, please take it. You don't understand. Like, it would mean so much to me to know it's going to use, and it's just sitting there. You imagine when he passes away, everything I have to go through. And when I went to his house, I was like, oh my God. But, like, he's also he had a life that he was such an independent man, just like my father.
Right.
That I think with those type of men, it's so difficult to switch their mindset and to take them out of their environment, because I think part of it is they're holding on to those physical things because it reminds them of how they were.
Right.
And it's when they give it up, it's like they're giving up all that they could do. Like, they're just, I think it's more than giving up material things. It's they're giving up the person they are trying to hold on to that they really can't.
But we need to try to also let them know that what you're leaving is going to be a burden on me. Because what am I going to do with all this stuff? I have my own stuff.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to keep your stuff too.
And I feel like this is where faith steps in. And it's like, you know, really, and I've had to do this with my grandmother. She's a very faith-filled woman, you know, and I said, at the end of the day, these are things. These are not things that represent you. Like, this isn't you. And then finding the things that do. Like, I created a wall in our house of, like, the history of our family, and, like, took pictures, like, my mom, my grandmother, my mom, my aunt, and my uncle's passports from when they left Cuba. You know, nice. the telegram to my grandfather saying that he could leave Cuba with the kids. Like, all these, like, things. And I said to her, I go, these things are special because they tell a story. That table's not you. That table says nothing about you. Yeah, you sat there and had breakfast with my grandfather every day, and it, okay, a picture of you having breakfast with him there, that's special. Right. This table's not special. And so I think it's like, you know, and like, just like, and I told her, I go, as a woman of faith, like, you have to remember, like, you know, these things, they mean nothing. What means something is the moment that was created, the memories you had with your grandchildren and your children, and those are the things, and those things continue because you're here, and what's more important is you, like, that you're healthy, that you're whole, that you're, you know, making room. My husband always says this. He's like, when you remove something, you make room for what's new to come in.
I love that.
You know, and so it's like, if you hold on to everything that's from the past, then you can't make space for something new. What we've done with a lot of her older things that we've had to start, you know, because again, like, we sold almost all of our belongings to come here, but still, you know, my mom had moved into that house 10 years before, like, you know, and so we've started to, like, find, and I don't know if your parents are like this, but, like, I'll find somebody who really needs something, because there's a lot of people that are coming here that have nothing, like, nothing, and that table could literally be, you know, and so saying, like, now that table is somewhere where this brand new family can create memories over dinner. You know, like, it's like your legacy continues to live on because you're giving something to someone who has nothing. And so, like, because the idea of things going to Goodwill was like, I think, our reminder.
Okay, excuse that.
Part two is coming.
we put an alarm as a reminder to know that we had to stop. But we're going to continue this, right?
Absolutely. So we're going to continue the conversation. There's a lot to unpack. So stay tuned. We're coming back.